Go first.
Oh, I'm first out. Hi there, everybody. We're here today just to tell you a little bit about some of the business that we have in town over the years, what has acquired, and how different it is today. When I was growing up, we had a dairy in town called the Lurch Dairy, and it was at the corner of Front Street and Water Street. And it was started by the Lurch family. They lived across the street in a big house that was there. And so it was close and convenient for them to go to work and always be there if there was a problem. And growing up, it was really a nice thing to do. And they would also deliver, and everybody had uh, an aluminum box on their front porch about this size, and it would hold a couple quarts of milk and some pints, and they would deliver every day and pick up the old bottles, take them back and refurbish them and redo them again. And but then there were some days that I was just maybe 5 or 6, and my mother finally said I was old enough to go pick some up by myself since we only lived a block away. So I would take my original can, and I was given this, and I would take it down and get it to them and get it filled. And they even left me out on the floor of their dairy and left me watch them fill it. And it was amazing how much of that milk spritzed out all over the floor. If you got too close, you'd get wet. But it was fun to watch, and it was a neat idea. So I just take this and took it home and till the next time. And then later on, it also became, we went away from the silver and we had the blue ones. So that way I had one for each hand if they wanted. Excuse me, sorry about that. So, and they were in business for quite a long time. And they finally decided they wanted to retire, and they sold it to a family called Kemp who had moved here just recently. And they took it over and really worked at it well and enlarged things and made things bigger, more trucks. They also came out with a new thing called the baby face bottle, which if you look at it has the, it's called Brookfield Dairy at that time. And this upper one has a real tiny little baby face on both sides and its own lid. Everything's stating the Brookfield Dairy. Now this is the quart size, and here's the pint size. Exactly the same. I think they even took a patent out on it because it's a rare item today. You don't see these very often. But this went to the school. The elementary schools got this every day for the kids for their meal at lunch. It would be picked up after they were finished with their school. The truck would get it, pick up all the bottles, take them back, wash them, and the next morning they were always there in time for the next meal of lunch. So it was a very profitable business. They delivered all over. They made all kinds. They just did a lot in the milk department. They had daughters who were, well, the youngest daughter was my age, so I got to know them, which is where I got the bottles. Because when they gave up their business, the daughter said to me, "Here, I want you to have a bottle of each so that you have a memory of all the times that we had." And when they moved here, she was like 14 years old. And I think they came from Michigan.
They did.
And she was allowed to drive at 14 in Michigan. So anywhere we wanted to go, all the kids, all the girls in school, call Aloma. We would go traveling, basketball games or anywhere, someplace for ice cream and things like that. Hey, Aloma would take us. And so we had a really, really fun relationship with her over the years. And she is still alive today. I haven't talked to her recently, but periodically we'd get in touch and see what's going on in each other's lives. But the dairy, of course, is no more. Once the family decided they were too old to run it anymore, there just were not any takers. And so it closed. And today there are apartments in that area. They demolished the building completely and made it into apartments. And it was kind of sad to see it come down with all the memories. And then right there at the end of the property, close to the railroad tracks, there was a mail drop-off from the trains with the big bags could be put there so that the mail could be dropped off on a daily basis and picked up. So that was all right there on the property. So everything just changed so completely. And that's the way life goes, though. And that's the end of my story on the dairy. My other story that I thought maybe I would tell you, I'll let Harry tell a story. I'll let him talk for a change.
I grew up in the north end of town, and there was a business up there started by Thomas Edison, the inventor. It was the Edison split door factory. They manufactured spark plugs for automobiles. And what I remember most is they had a lot of sawdust that they would sprinkle on the floor in the machining area. And evidently the machining wasn't as clean as it is today because it was loaded with oil. And they would dump that out in the back, and what became a dump for the area. And as kids, we would go out there and scrounge through that stuff and pick up any metal pieces so we could sell it to the scrap man when he drove around. And of course, our trousers got pretty oily, and our parents my mother didn't like that. So she had a fly swatter that she would use pretty effectively. And there were some lagoons there, so all the kids had slingshots, and we would scrounge around for bottles to throw in these lagoons and use our slingshots to break bottles and everything else. Eventually, eventually Champion Spark Plugs bought it out, and then they went out of business. But it became a Superfund site, and for a long time it wasn't nobody could use it because it was a super. Now the building has been demolished, and Lehigh Valley Hospital purchased the property, and they're going to be putting up a building in that area. Now, if we start from High Street and head north, there were 6 mom and pop grocery stores in that area. There were 2 on Kickline Avenue, 1 at Hess Avenue, 1 across the street at Wilson Avenue, and 2 on High Street. And on the west side of High Street, there was a brake repair shop. Monroe Werkheiser did brake repair there and sold tires. And beyond that, on High Street, Gangler's had a hot house. And when I was a little kid, I would walk up there and buy plants and plant them in a garden that we had during the Second World War in our victory gardens. And now I'll let Jeanette talk some more. I talk long enough, longer than she'll house.
Well, as you can tell, I lived at one end of town, he lived at the other, but we managed to meet each other and still have a good time. But growing up, as he said, we had a lot of businesses in a short span of area. Many businesses in blocks combined. One of them was called Paul Fritschman's Luncheonette. He and his wife were good friends of my parents, so I got there quite a while. I always called it Paulie Fritschman's. I never said luncheonette or anything like that. But it was a really fun place. It wasn't a large bar for sitting, but they always served, the standard things that you'll find, hot dogs, hamburgers, this type of thing. And so you could sit there, and they just had just a very small square area for the dishwashing that could be done and stuff like that. Mainly, most of the cooking was done in their family kitchen and then just brought out and reheated and stuff like that. And on the other side of it, they had a big glass case filled with penny candy. You talk about all the really good stuff that you could get. The Perels, the little green mint things that you could find at Christmas and holidays. And oh, it was so much fun going there and looking at it all. And as I said, being friends with these people, they, of course, lived in the back, and they had, between their house and the kitchen, there was another room, and they had a pool table there. So a lot of the men would congregate after work or in the evening to shoot pool and talk and have some coffee and something, probably even maybe to drink. They might have brought their own, I don't know. I was too young for that stuff. But there was always a door from the pool room into the kitchen area, which was quite large. And that's where they had their things. So being friends, I'd get there on a fairly regular basis, and we'd sit and I could watch them and eat there and sit on their side porch for a while. And then on the front, on the other side of it, they had the post office was there for a while. So there was lots of stuff walking around. You could do anything you wanted, but I also liked to go into the pool room and watch them shoot pool. But Mr. Fritschman said, you cannot go in there unless I say it's okay. So he would go to see who the guys were that were shooting pool in the pool room, that it would be safe for me to go in there as a young kid. And so I did that and watched, but eventually they started to teach me how to play pool. Well, I fell in love with that. So on a regular basis, whenever they'd let me, I'd be there to learn how to shoot pool. And I loved it. I haven't done it in many years. I doubt if I could hit the ball. But it was fun time. And it was a great place. As I said, people worked the shifts at Bethlehem Steel, so he was pretty much open, except like from maybe 1 o'clock in the morning till 6, so that anybody coming home from their shifts could stop in there, get something to eat or whatever they wanted, talk and spend some time, and then go home. So it was a really, really neat place. And growing up, I got to high school and I started dating this one young man who happened to live at the other end of town. I think you just heard from him lately. And he would walk me home, but because my parents didn't know I was seeing anybody, we would walk on the opposite side of the street. But he would stop the block before we got to Paulie Fritschman so that my father wouldn't know I was seeing anybody. But he made sure he stood there until I got safely across the street without any problems. Well, like a small town, if you've ever lived in one, you know it's going to come out. And eventually my father said to me, okay, who are you seeing? What do you mean, who am I seeing? I know you're seeing somebody and he's dropping you off a corner from Paulie's. So I admitted who I was seeing, and he said, okay, he can come down and drop you off at the house now. He doesn't have to do it that way. So eventually then my parents got to know Harry, and here we are today, still sitting here having our good times. And the memories are there, but it was one of those places, you know, that you acquire not just a personal place, but we loved their ice cream. My father was an ice cream fanatic. Every night when he was home, not working the shift, I had to go up and buy a quart of ice cream. So it became my middle name as well. And every Thursday growing up, they got from Hershey, that's the ice cream place, and they would deliver their fresh stuff, but if there was any that was not completely used, they would pick it up because it was a week after that was set there. It was time to get it. But they never took it away. They put it outside, and all the kids in the neighborhood could go on a Thursday at a certain time and help themselves to the ice cream that was left over. Oh boy, did we have a fun time. You remembered sometimes to take a spoon with you so that you could dip in it. Other times you didn't have it, you just took your hands and you went like this and put it in your mouth. It was messy, but fun. And they lived upstairs in the apartments on the second floor, which was really quite nice. So I got to visit up there and spend time. It was a neat place, and it's nice today. It's now a salon Mia place, so I can go in there and get a haircut, but I can still reminisce what it looked like when it was Polly Frischman's. And one major thing, which you won't find today, there was a young man in town, his name officially was Steve Sabo, but he had been born in Germany during the First World War and suffered from the sound of the bombs, and he suffered from that and never got his speech back. So he always said his name was DB Dabo. Well, he was known all over town because he could never work anywhere because he couldn't speak. But all the businesses in town would have him washing dishes or helping in some way that he could be with people and feel like he was still a person. And so he would stop in at Polly Frischman's, and maybe not every day, but almost at a certain time, and help wash the dishes. And then they would pay him a little bit of money so he could have it and go home. And he thought that was just wonderful. And he was all over. A lot of businesses helped him in that respect. And so that's, as you can tell, a place where I spent a lot of time because I had lots of stories. But what?
Forgot to tell them they give them cigarettes, packs of cigarettes.
Oh, they would also give Stevie Dabo cigarettes so that he could share them with his friends and not have to spend his own money to do that. Now I'll let him talk a little.
Well, if we go south on Main Street from High, the next business would have been Solomon's store. I don't recall what's in that building now, but it's still a store. It's at the corner of Ackerman and Main Street on the southwest corner. And across the street there's like a little mall. There were beauty parlors in there and some other businesses which I wasn't aware of. Beyond that, at the corner of Bachman and Main was the Town Tavern. And Bill, what the devil was his last name? He was the owner, and that was pretty well frequented by a lot of people in town. It was a good bar. Everybody liked it, no problems. And I forgot to tell you, on the east side of Main Street at Wagner, Hartman brothers, Charlie and Harry Hartman, had a Sunoco station. So today it's now Census Auto Repair. And the Hartmans had it there for quite a long time. I think even during the centennial they were still there.
I think.
And then beyond the bar at thing, you go a little beyond that, there was the theater in Hellertown. That was built in the 40s. Before that was built, all the films were shown in the Legion building. And during the second
Mostly silent films.
they,
that time.
including silent films, yes. And Jeanette has a book that
I
was
have the music book. My mother played the piano for the silent films.
and there were no titles, just a number. And evidently something came up in the lower corners with a number on it, and that's the tune she would have to play. And yeah, so, and if you go beyond the theater, there had been a small building there which was actually a school at one time, and then they turned it into a fish market, and finally it was torn down, and we have the car wash there. And then just to the south of that, Henry Becker built a building, Stanley Becker, and he did radio repair there during the 40s. And beyond, next to that, there was a Dixie cup, actually shaped like a Dixie cup. There were only a couple of them in the area. Mauer's Dairy had them. There was one on near Liberty High School, one on Pembroke Road, and the one in Hellertown. And Mr. Momich ran that. He had 3 sons, and Mike, Dan, and what was he? Ray Momich. They worked in there, and then eventually he tore that down and built a building there, and it was a lunch. It was a lunchroom and ice cream bar. Later on, that business went up or down, and Dr. Way, no.
His memory is for names is better than mine.
Dr. Well, we skipped that. There was a doctor office there. It'll come to me a little later. and then beyond that, Harold Clausen had a golf station right there in the corner where, was it
7-Eleven
7-Eleven is? That was a golf station at one time. And then across the street, Goro had his ice cream shop and hang out for the kids in high school, and that was on the alley. It was just a small bungalow on the alley that it started. And then he built a building at the corner of Main and Thomas Avenue. And if you start going north, in that building, I think there was still a laundromat there, and then Bill Seaman had a radio TV shop. Initially it wasn't a TV, but later on it became TV when they start becoming popular. And at the corner of Linden, and there's a garage there now, there had always been a Texaco gas station there at that time in the 40s. And incidentally, when we went to school, they didn't plow the streets. If we had a snowstorm in the winter, They had a trolley car because we had trolley. We didn't have buses. We had trolleys going through town. They had a trolley come through with a big, huge brush on the front. And they would sweep a path right down along the trolleys. So we had a path, we could walk to school in that path. We didn't have to worry about chugging our way through snow piles. And we had some pretty decent snowstorms then. So,
But we still went to school.
yeah, okay, it's your turn again.
Well, now he's down to the old school, and then we went to the Legion years ago, like you said, for the silent films. And then when you got older, the Legion has always been a dominant place for people to go, and you could spend your evenings there and have fun. They had dances every Friday, so it was a great place for young people to go and have a good time. And old people, you didn't have to just go for the dances. You could go to socialize and eat and drink and have fun, be merry. And then when you get down in the next corner, you know, there's Prosser's drugstore, and they had only had, say, 2/3 of the building was the drugstore, and there was a hairdresser on the other side. And she was there for quite a while, and the Prossers decided they needed the space, so they said they wouldn't lease it to them anymore. So then they remodeled inside and became a larger store with a great place to go and have your ice cream sundaes and your root beer floats. And it was people and kids after school, that was a place to go and congregate as well, sit at the little bar, eat your ice cream, drink your stuff, and then you headed home, because everybody had to be home by 5 o'clock. Because the whistles would blow in town. That was the signal, head for home. And all the parents expected you to do it. So then we continued down and getting close to the center of town, and at that time there were a lot of businesses all over the place. We had a bank, savings and loan, a bank, there were different ones there. At the corner where now it's the Truist Bank. Across the street had been a hardware store, Rauscher's hardware store, and above that they had a bowling alley for many years, and then they built another one up at the other end of town where the drugstore is now, CVS. So we had all kinds of stuff. You could just keep on going all the way down, and we're already down to Borough Hall, and there was a big hotel, Hellertown hotel there, and they had where Dunkin' Donuts, that was all like parking area and lot for grass to grow, and in between there was the fish place. You could go down and watch them. They would be swimming around and going down to the creek, and we had fun just going there and looking at that stuff on our way home from school. Then on the corner we had an Acme, and on the other corner we had an A&P. So can you imagine today 2 stores like that, one across the street from the other? They both survived and did very, very well. Then over across the street we had Borough Hall, not quite as large as what it is today, but it was there and did its job. And where the bank is, there used to be a little, almost like a hut, and they sold groceries and homemade produce stuff and things like that. And then that eventually became a bank too. Next to it was the church, and you had the corner place where the A&P store was. Then you had a place where Jaeger's is now, and that was Verna's, a woman's shop, and then Staley's, the men's shop, was next door after they moved from the area up near Rauscher's, where they had just a small one. I mean, there was stuff everywhere. You know, you didn't have to go far. Today, there's one store, Giant, you know, where you could just walk 2 blocks from your house out and its car, running around and see it coming back, and it was fun. At least going to the store some places was fun for kids, not always. And then we had, next corner there was Raiders, which was a grocery store and meat store. You could get a lot of your meats cut there. And there's an electric building on the other side where they did a lot of selling of electric items. Another hotel across the street. Dr. Burke's Dresser's place was there. And then you got up, and then you got to Polly Fritschman's, and Dr. Dybert was in the house on the other side of the property. You kept going, and then there was another corner. There were some houses, and they had a really small dairy. I forget the name of it, but you could get your milk in there too later on.
It was like in the basement.
Yeah, it was like on the first floor, and then they built up on the top of it. But it was a small town, but you could do and get whatever you wanted within a block or two of your house. So it was a small place. Doesn't have quite the same small town feel that it used to have when you could walk and do anything you wanted to do. I could go on and on, but I think you've probably had enough for one day.
You forgot to tell them how they distributed your funds and accepted funds at the bank. Remember, they had those brass wheel thing that it was like a wheel there, and it was a brass door.
Oh,
on it.
yeah.
When you
where I
open that thing from the inside, you opened it and you put anything in there, and they close that, and then they take the funds, so you couldn't reach in and get anything. But the bank had been robbed in about either 22 or 28, and they got, must have been 28, because I think they got about $22,000, if I remember correctly, from
Can you imagine?
information down at the mill.
1922, that much money in the bank. I did forget about that, but that was really
Yeah.
what seeing these revolve.
And while I was in the service, I was home on leave, and I had a government check that was issued to me by the Army. And I went down to that bank, and I know the woman who was the banker. I didn't know her at the time, but later on I knew her. And they wouldn't cash that check. So I couldn't get it cashed there. I had to go to Bethlehem to get it cashed. And I said, I would never do business at that bank. And so I started working at Western Electric. They started a credit union, and that's where I started. I said,
Imagine not cashing the government.
Vindictive, would you say?
yeah. I even walked down in my uniform, which I would seldom do.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes it was,
Oh, incidentally,
frustrating.
also,
And other
you know,
times it was fun.
Jeanette told you about her walking down to the dairy. Well, at the lower end of Kiernan Avenue, beneath the railroad, there's a culvert. It's about 4 feet high and about 5 feet wide. For any drain water from Main Street would go through that culvert. Well, I had a can similar to Jeanette's, and I'd walk through that culvert over to Ravenna Street, and there was a farm down there, and I'd get milk in the morning. It was still warm when I picked it up. And we also had fresh milk, and boy, you could see the cream rise to the top, and that was pretty good. I still like fresh milk. When we were in England, we were visiting some people, and they had a dairy, and we had breakfast there, and I had fresh milk. And boy, it gave me memories. Yeah.
Actually, even for these, there's a little spoon I have in the kitchen that you use to dip out the cream on the top of the bottle, so that if you wanted to use it
Yeah.
for something else, it's only about this big, but it has a nice size thing, and you just put it in the top of these bottles and scrape out the cream and use it whatever you wanted to. It was,
And if people,
I never liked the milk, so
if people had milk delivered to them in the wintertime, it was cold, it would start to freeze, and you could see the cream going to the top, pushing up on the lid. Saw that too.
oh yeah, we've seen a lot in our time. Changes, some good and not others, but at least we can reminisce and talk, and hopefully you have heard some things that you weren't aware of. And
When I did walk her home, the business I stopped at was Brown Electric. Was there for many years,
yeah.
and now there's, I don't know, something
There's
else
something
in
else
it.
there.
And the Braveheart was built. That was run by Louis Vargo and his mother Mary, and then eventually Tommy Ortwine had that business, and he built the building there just north of Depot Street, just
Yeah, where
beyond
the
the
gym is
apartment
now.
building there. He built that, and he had the Ortwines. Then later on, Rich Maurer had it, and then Campanella had it, and I guess even
And
young Campanella and young Eddie Fluke had it for a while too.
Yeah,
But
see a lot over our time. We've seen a lot of businesses
when
come
Tommy
and go.
Ortwine had that bar, it was really a couples bar. It was fun. We'd go, all the couples go in there. If you were there after 2 o'clock, then he'd lock the door, and he'd put on party records. You sit there drinking beer and listen to party records.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. It was. Plus,
Of course, we were with her brother, so it was okay.
my brother Monk.
And his wife. That's
Yeah.
another thing. With her being quite a bit younger than, we knew her brother and his friends and their wives, so we could party with them.
As we got
She-
older, yes.
She also babysat for a couple, and we became friends with them and their friends and their spouses. So we had several gangs that we could travel around with.
Different ages,
Yeah.
different age groups. Once we became adults,
Right.
you could do that, and you got to know them so much better. We had a lot. We spent a lot of time. Every Friday night was go out night, but we all did it. It wasn't just us. Everybody either went to the Legion or to the Dewey, and because they all had dances, and it was great. We got a babysitter, and you went out at 10 o'clock at night.
Once we graduated from high school, we had our high school friends, and after school, some went to college, some were in the service, some were working and stuff, and they all came back to this area to teach or whatever they were doing, work, and we all, 5 couples, had children in the same graduating class. So we all got together because of the kids again, and we've remained good friends until they passed away.
Over 50 years we could
Yeah.
get together, and so when we went out and did anything, we always had company. Yeah, we hardly ever did it just on our own. There were always a few of us together, having fun. That's all you had to do. There's no place else. You didn't have to go out of town to have a good time. And the police were nice.
Yeah.
They didn't
We took
arrest you
people
all the
home
time.
if
They take
had
you
too
home.
much. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
even if it didn't go home that well,
Right.
or anything else, you know. So, and the police never.
Yeah.
It was a small force. Most of them were Hellertonians,
Right.
and
Yeah, people looked out after one another and things like that. We could go on and on. There's still other things that we could probably tell you, but
is that enough for today?
Yes.
Okay. Is the speaker on?
Yes, it is. It is on. It's good.
Never, I'm never going to live that down. Never,
You're gonna have to give it.
never.
he's not gonna let you forget that one, is he?
There's no way.
I mean, they all think he's the quiet one, right?
Yeah, you need to bring me some of that music and play, because it's a silent film.
Yeah, there you go. I'll have to look
You know
through.
what?
I'll have to look through.
Voiceover.
I'll
One
have
of
to
those
look.
comic voiceover.
I'll have to look at the book, see what it would be appropriate. Oh.